Hello, everyone. This is Anti-Media. That's nephew Ryan.
And he's Joel, my uncle.
I'm a millennial. No, I'm a boomer. You're a millennial.
I'm a millennial. I'm barely a millennial. You're barely a boomer from my math.
Yeah, no, that's true. I'm the tail end of the boomers, and you're the front end of the
I'm
millennials.
I'm the front end of the millennials. 1982. Now you're gonna all steal my identity online.
Very good. Well, hey, speaking of stealing identity, let's steal the identity of what happened to the virus. We need to find out
Mm-hmm.
where the virus disappeared to. Here's your here's your picture that you wanted to send me. Flu is very low this year because everyone is wearing masks and social distancing. Why is COVID so bad? Because no one is wearing masks. Yeah,
Sorry, I enjoyed that meme.
that is an excellent meme.
Yeah.
And
Yes. The
let me
classic NPC meme format with COVID and the flu. That's
yeah,
great. It's good stuff.
For all those who aren't, for all of those who are boomers, NPC, non-playing character, non-player,
Non-player character.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Right.
Yes.
Just a quick
Awesome.
overview. We've had officially 3 pandemics in the last 130 years, 120 years. So we had the Spanish flu, which, by the way, my grandpa, your great grandpa, got when he was around 10 years old. It almost killed him, and it did make him have a stutter for the rest of his life. That's where he developed his stutter. A little bit of hair loss, but that had nothing to do with my hair loss, apparently. Then we had the 1957-58 pandemic, H2N2. So 1918 was H1N1.
Yeah.
Then
I
in
remember that one.
1968, which I can remember, was the H3N2, which, incidentally, by my calculations, which a lot of people have also said are the same, is almost identical to this one as far as mortality and spread. The difference being, of course, testing was not done as much. And if you remember, it went into 1969 and it went right through Woodstock. That was Woodstock.
Ah.
That was during the time of Woodstock, but there was no noticeable deaths at Woodstock because of it. And then there was, of course, the 2009 H1N1, which, of course, is still the Spanish flu, but that one was very few people.
Flu.
That was very few people, but it was still considered to be a problem. So those are the...
That was the swine. That was the good old swine flu.
Oh, yeah. But it was still H1N1, which is, of course, the same as Spanish flu.
Yeah.
All right. So, 1968, like I said, they said it killed about 100,000 people in the United States. The population in the United States then was basically half. So for that flu season, because they didn't, like we're doing with COVID, they just keep counting from when it started.
It resets every year.
Yeah, it resets.
As opposed to keep counting. Yeah.
And
that's a problem.
And the average age of death was in the 80s again. So this was a very, very similar virus to what we're experiencing now. And no one except for a few people noticed. Apparently they closed one school somewhere for a week. Hospitals noticed because they were quite full, but the public didn't. So, and this is just again this is all from the Center of Disease Control, and their facts their facts are called Flu View, and they have some interesting things here, including here, which I'm gonna come back to this one later. This is a very confusing chart, which maybe if it applies, I'll come back to this later. All right, let me just quickly go through the numbers. So here's all these charts are from 2019 to today, and these are all from the World Health Organization, and these are all the flu numbers. So here's the season from early 2019 over on this side. Here's from early 2020, and then you see that there's just nothing happens in 2021.
Yeah.
Or
from all I read, 2020 was shaping up to be a pretty bad flu season.
And it was. And so if you look here, here's Brazil. Theirs was more in the middle of 2019 and the early 2020. Yeah, early 2020 was looking to be the worst flu season in decades.
Yeah.
Here's Cambodia. Now, here's one of the few countries that actually has numbers in later 2020. Notice that? They actually have numbers. So Cambodia, we'll come to Thailand and their neighbors in a minute. But those are the only countries that I could find that actually have, and by the way, the blue is H1N1. And blue is still that same 2009 one, PDM09. So I'm going to leave Cambodia there in case we come back to it. Here's Canada. So right at the beginning of the year, this 9 is the beginning of 2020. It was shaping up, as you said, to be very bad. And it disappears. China, almost identical. Colombia, a little bit more scattered, but still disappears. Croatia, just because I love Croats. And there's Egypt. Egypt was having a bad one compared to their previous one. In Finland, France, Germany, Hungary, India, Indonesia, Japan, Korea. Oh, here's Laos. Laos, like Cambodia, actually has recorded some recently. I'll leave
this
them
year.
There. Yeah. They're one of the few. Malaysia never had really a season. They just kept having it all the time, but it disappeared. So flu has just plain disappeared, essentially, from the planet. The most serious pandemic in the last 120 years, H1N1 strain of flu, has disappeared. And now the question is why. There's Russia, Singapore, South Africa, Sweden, Thailand. Why did Thailand not? Dang it. Where's that one? Ukraine even. UK. And again, these numbers are relative on the side, so they're not. So you have to stop and look at the numbers. But the charts are still relatively accurate.
They pretty much disappear. Yeah, the states had a few cases this year that they recorded, but almost nothing.
Yeah, and either it's because these numbers are so high I can't see them, but looking at that chart, I think I see a little bit right here. Tiny bit.
Alberta's had like nothing.
Yeah, I can actually get you the hard numbers in a second. And here's Vietnam. So Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. They're all buddies. Zambia also had a smattering in good old Zambia. So you've got some stuff to show me. So here's your chance. You're going to suggest why this is happening, and then I'm going to maybe suggest my reason, and we'll see if we can agree or disagree. All right, go for it.
All right. So first theory is we sent all the kids home from school, so there's no more flu.
Okay.
But that theory falls apart. So this is
NPR. Okay.
That's their idea behind this article is that the flu disappeared because all the kids stayed home. But here in Alberta, the kids all went back to school.
Yeah.
And pretty much most of Canada, all the kids went back to school right away. So that's the same in the States. They might think that that's the reason because some areas the schools never went back. California.
This is from February, so this is relatively recent.
I know, but your theories on this can be colored by the reality of whether you're at school or not, or the kids are at school.
Right.
So I think that one falls apart because plenty of jurisdictions, the kids went back to school and have been at school the whole time, and there's no influence.
And the numbers were the same.
It's absolutely zero. So the next theory,
get rid of that one. Okay.
Get rid of that one. We can get to this one in a sec. But my next theory is travel.
Right.
People aren't traveling. This might actually have some effect. Generally, we end up getting influenza season, like say in the southern hemisphere, travels to the northern hemisphere.
Yep.
Right?
That's why we usually get our flu vaccines from what strains have been in Australia and New Zealand.
Australia. Yeah, exactly. So that is possible as one of the reasons. It's not a reason. It's definitely not the reason.
It's not on this page. I kept looking for it on this page. Never mind.
No, it's not on that page. This is just the statistics for
keep talking.
immunization.
I'll just get rid of that page.
Okay. So we'll put that in the corner as it might have an effect.
Now, of course, some countries, of course, island jurisdictions and stuff like New Zealand, Australia, stopped all travel, and they say that's the reason that they haven't had bad COVID. But they also are using it as a reason why they thought they had bad flu. The only problem is that their numbers are almost identical to the numbers throughout all of Eastern Asia.
Yeah.
And there's, as you know, they travel like crazy, including China. Of course, China's tough because you never can trust their numbers.
Yeah. No, Australia, especially Victoria area, the southern Australia with their whatever. They're basically a third world country with a dictator at this point in some of those provinces of Australia. They every once in a while, it's funny because COVID will just start up. It's like random cases pop up,
and then they lock down again.
Yeah, so then they lock down. So yes, it doesn't travel very far. It does have some effect, but clearly you can't get rid of the virus.
Right.
It's just not a thing. Once it's there, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now, my next thing on that is vaccines.
Okay.
Did the influenza vaccine, did people magically, way more percent of people get picked up the vaccine?
Oh, the flu
this year?
vaccine, right.
Gavin, come here and give me the phone. Sorry. Come here. I'll turn the TV on for you. He's losing his mind.
What is Gavin's opinion? That's probably a good question to ask.
Gavin, what's your opinion, buddy? Do you care? Yes. Family room connected. So on the vaccine side, you would expect a whole bunch more people got vaccinated this year. At least that's what people are. We've been told.
Right, and they're thinking that it just happened to cross over to that.
Yes. But according to Statista and also the Canadian Health Agency, the average amount over the last 10, 15 years has been about 30 to 35% of people get vaccinated every year. Oddly enough, in 2019, 2020, according to the Canada and Health Agency, it was actually closer to 40.
Okay, so this is the chart here showing all the different percentages by age.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but this is the year. This is the year before the pandemic. So this is the fall of 2019, winter of 2020.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Okay.
Yes. So this last year, so that'd be 2020, 2021, the current year, in the fall.
Okay.
You would assume that it would jump up a bunch, but it doesn't. It stays around 40%. It goes up a percent or two, but it was around 40 to 43% across the country.
Yeah, so that's all. So the all adults was it didn't ever go past 50% though, for sure.
No.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of people my age didn't take it because they saw COVID coming and saw, well, that's not going to make any difference.
No, it's not going to help you.
Okay, fair enough.
No, it doesn't. So that theory, as well as to why influenza might be gone, is we'll call it debunked.
I have made a horrible mistake. Okay, good. Right?
There we go. Now you fix it. So we will call that one debunked. It has nothing to do with the influenza.
So far, all of our suggestions are not working.
No.
Okay.
No. So I'll give you all. So we'll go to you now. It's your turn. We've debunked all of the easy ones.
So there's another potential viral characteristic. Basically, it's the bully on the block. So transmission of epidemic influenza. R. Edgar Hope Simpson, famous virologist. This was written in the 90s, I believe, maybe even the early 2000s. No, it was written after SARS-1, so they did talk about that a little bit. But he had something which he calls, and it's a little bit hard to see there, but it's called, he calls it the vanishing trick. And so he had already observed that there was this, he calls it antigenic drift here, but the idea was a big bully came on the block and knocked the other virus out of commission. So the potential for this is that the one virus comes along and the other one can't compete. It's sort of a Darwinistic survival of the fittest kind of thing. And because one of them is more virulent and able to spread faster, the other one loses its ability to get a foothold. So that has been suggested. But I actually kind of thought this might be the case, but I've since changed my mind on that because I believe the bigger problem is simply testing. So when you're testing for a virus, you have to test for a specific virus. So PCR tests, which of course they use, and now we're using it for everything, but they would always use it for whenever someone died or whenever someone showed up in the hospital with severe respiratory problems. They would do the PCR test. Turns out you actually have to feed the particular virus that you're looking for into the system. So starting in March, they stopped looking for H1N1 and other flu variants. They only then started looking for SARS-CoV-2. And if you don't input the right virus, you ain't going to find it. So there's no general viral test. They actually have to do a specific test. And as you know, these are extremely expensive. But if you watch the instructions on how to load it, they say you need to load the particular thing into the system, and then that's the only thing it'll find. So I think the most plausible explanation is that H1N1 and other flu variants have been either ganging up on COVID or perhaps sometimes even going past COVID as far as killing people. So here's the confusing chart from the World Health Organization, which I want to show you. So here's this chart, and they show you deaths. So, and this is a Power BI thing, so I can't quite zoom in. Okay, so all deaths involving COVID, and so this is from. I'm going to go back to yearly. This is their. After someone dies, they try to do it. They try to sort of do some extra charting on that to see how they died. And this chart is showing us here all deaths. And so this is from 2021 so far. They think there's 153,000. This is the United States, obviously. Deaths from all causes, 733,000. And then they have deaths involving pneumonia. So now in the old days, they used to call it flu and pneumonia season, right? P&I it was called.
Yep.
And then they say, okay, so here's deaths involving pneumonia. Here it's deaths involving pneumonia and COVID. Here's deaths involving all deaths involving influenza. And then here's deaths involving all three. 183,000 is the number. So this is where it gets confusing. So you're saying, well, wait a minute. There's 153,000 all deaths involving COVID. How can there be more here? So unpacking this chart is really confusing, but the numbers are indeed, of course, less. So let's see if I can get back to a previous year here now. So total all places of death. So here's 2020. Again, because this is a little bit of a funky thing. So this is all COVID deaths, all total deaths, 3,337,000. But then, of course, 8,000 with just influenza, 177,000 with COVID-19 and pneumonia. So this is confusing. So the P&I, the pneumonia and influenza deaths, might be there in significant numbers, perhaps even over 50%. So if you take this number and this number, all of a sudden you end up with more than 50% of the COVID numbers. So this is, again, very confusing because of the way they've termed this.
Yeah.
But it's there. And now people say, well, COVID causes pneumonia, which is a fair assessment. But we still have pneumonia floating around. So if they're not testing, except for maybe when the person dies, but even then, not all the time.
Yeah.
We could have pneumonia, influenza, and COVID all operating at the exact same time. And when you look at this, in the fact, they keep saying, of course, that this is not seasonal, but it's following the exact same chart as all previous seasons. Every place that, for the most part, every place that had it had it during the exact same time that they've had their season, their viral season, respiratory season, as they call it. So my suggestion is perhaps, going back to our friends in Cambodia, they're starting to do testing again. In fact, it looks like they never stopped. Looks like our friends in Cambodia never stopped testing. Laos looks like they did stop testing, but they said, wait a minute, we should maybe pick this up again because it could be H1N1. Which, by the way, remember the cytokine storms they were talking about with COVID? You ever heard that phrase?
Yes. Yep.
Guess where they first observed that cytokine storm?
H1N1.
Spanish flu. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So there you go. Yeah. So my guess is that they'd stop testing because those tests are expensive. You can only do one particular variant at a time, and that. So that's. What do you think?
I think that is plausible. The only jurisdiction in probably North America or Canada that can put a dent in that would be Alberta. Right. Because apparently we spend more money than anybody else on absolutely everything.
Okay.
Because the roads used to be paved with gold.
That's true. They were.
We've been slowly digging the gold up and wasting it. But that's another topic for another time. But we're one of the few provinces where they do genetic testing on almost every single sample because our lab capacity is higher than every other province.
And have you seen their numbers?
No, so that's the thing. I was just trying to find it, but I do remember our medical officer of health talking about this and that they are doing separate influenza testing as one of the few places, and that would be in Alberta, and they are not finding it very much.
All right, so here's Alberta's COVID cases.
We're landlocked, so
that's true.
People don't travel. People don't travel here, so if it's not here, it's not coming here.
Right. Now here's Alberta's chart. Actually, on the CTV website, let me just take you up to the top here. This is kind of neat. So you can compare countries. So here's Canada. I'm going to put Alberta, but at the very bottom, they have a neat trick where they let you put in a province.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put in Alberta, and then I'm going to put in Poland.
Oh, yeah, it'll be the same.
Another landlocked. No, seriously, it's. I got to put it in
Yeah.
twice so it doesn't. We can't. So look at this, Alberta and Poland, almost the exact same curve. And so if Poland, which ended up going spiking, looks like it.
Yeah.
And these are a little bit confusing again because they always start day 0 from when they first had their 100th case. So you don't necessarily know if it's shifting left or right. Let me put Hungary in. Hungary's a neighbor as well. It turns out landlocked countries in Eastern Europe had almost identical charts to Alberta. See, look at that. Poland, Hungary, and there's Alberta. Pretty similar. Let's go to Estonia. Like Estonia? So the question, of course, remains. So even Estonia looks identical.
Yep.
And let's throw Saskatchewan in because, hey, I'm Saskatchewan. There we are. And us and Alberta had a pretty similar chart, too.
Manitoba's was a little bit more in the middle, and it's going back up.
And then Manitoba's was pretty similar, but their chart was pretty similar. Now, again, so if we're dealing with, so here's all, now they've readjusted it, but there we go. Manitoba, Alberta, Saskatchewan, essentially the same. But to contrast that with Ontario, who have now gone into a ridiculous lockdown. And this is cases, I should have been on deaths. But Manitoba was the highest. Ontario has never, Saskatchewan peaked higher than Ontario, and they're freaking out. So, interesting.
Yeah.
So, getting back to the flu.
Back to the flu. So, I have one last theory for you.
Oh, you do?
One last theory.
Let's hear it.
I do. And it is called viral interference. It's actually very similar to what you just brought up as your theory. But what is happening in viral interference? Now, this was done during the H1N1 back in, 10, 11, 9? 2009, whatever the year that was.
2009, yeah.
2009. They found that there was a French study done that discovered that they were having a really bad cold season, like bad rhinovirus season that year. And it disappeared when H1N1 showed up. And then they also had something happen then a couple years later where influenza disappeared because they had an incredibly bad cold season.
Was that 3 years ago? Because I got that cold.
Yeah, it might have been. So they've kind of discovered. Now this is incredibly experimental. So I'm just throwing this out there as a theory. Is that what happens? Is there is something in your body called that your body generates interferons. Yeah. And the interferons, what happens is it actually stops other infections so that it can fight the infection that it's currently dealing with.
So that might then bring us full circle all the way. Okay, it's not really full circle because we haven't mentioned it yet. Ivermectin has been all of a sudden showing that it's pretty effective across all of these cases.
Yep.
And, of course, it's an antiparasitic, much like whatever that stuff was called, hydrochlor, whatever that was called.
Hydrochloroquine.
Thank you. Yeah. But ivermectin is all of a sudden showing incredible results, including in Mexico, where if you test positive, they give you ivermectin immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and they're seeing some really good results. But anyways,
so
that would be a viral interference thing, because if you can spark the system that is generally attacking these things, then you'll be on your way. Right.
Yeah. Yep. So your system goes into overdrive, and it basically tells your cells to just not get infected by anything. Yeah.
Well, the numbers would probably support that. The numbers would also support the vanishing act, which would the disappearing trick. But it also would support the fact that, by golly, they're not testing. So
it's probably a mixture of all 3 or 4 of these things.
Well, maybe we should take a road trip to Cambodia and Laos and go see what they're doing.
Sounds like a good idea to me. Yeah. If YouTube could pay for it, that'd be wonderful.
Oh,
so
I'll ask.
Now we need a donation link.
We won't be able to come back. So that's right.
No, but hey, that's fine.
All right. Well, hey, let's leave it there. We'll maybe readdress this in a couple months and see who's a little bit more right, and we'll go at it from there. So that's it.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Joel.
Fun.
It has.
And we'll see what we come up with next time. Bye bye.
You bet. Bye.